I want to talk about a game that did a lot for the first-person shooter genre of gaming, a game that honestly got forgotten with time and never really took off, despite gathering a cult following over the years. A game that introduced mechanics that we still use today in games like Call of Duty and Battlefield. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If y'all don't know, my name is Ghost. I truly do appreciate you guys stopping on by the video today. I usually do a lot of Call of Duty content, but I enjoy doing these one-off style of videos as well. Today, I want to talk about Black. Black is a first-person shooter game developed by Criterion, released on the Xbox and PlayStation 2 in February of 2006. Being probably most notable for the racing series Burnout, the developers of Criterion said they wanted to do for shooting what Burnout did for racing. And in a way, they kinda did.
Kind of place, full of the type of people I like. Quiet and out of the way.
You play as Jack Keller, a Black Ops agent that's being interrogated about missions that he was involved in with a terrorist operation. You, the player, are going through these flashbacks as the missions, and yeah, a Black Ops game before Call of Duty Black Ops was even thought of. The game featured, just over-the-top cinematics, cinema-style battles, a great sound design, and a focus on destructive environments that, for at the time, we just didn't see. Despite the overall gameplay being praised, the game honestly had a few shortcomings. With the lack of multiplayer and the campaign being relatively short, it led to what most people did. You play it once or twice, maybe try it on a difficulty that's harder, and then you end up just dropping it completely. And this was at a time that, COD 3 was fresh out, bringing multiplayer alongside other shooters like Halo 2. Black just didn't get a chance to live on, despite being what one of the devs called, and I quote, gun porn. It did lack the overall replayability to bring people back. But let's talk about a few things that Black was first to use and that is still used today in first-person shooter games, like blur. When reloading a weapon in Black, everything around you blurs out, really hyper-focusing on the gun model while it goes through the animation. And for a time, the gun models were just gorgeous. I mean, unlike anything we'd seen yet. Nowadays, a lot of first-person shooter players turn off motion blur and other forms of blur just because graphics nowadays are so good, and they're good enough that we'd rather pay attention to the environment and what's going on around us rather than focusing on the gun model. But these techniques are still in use today and does give a realistic feel when doing, certain animations or during cinematic cutscenes. Another feature that Black introduced to the first-person shooter genre was destructible environments. Some levels being hugely just based on this alone. You'd be flanking around enemies in tight corridors and blowing up walls behind them, shooting people in the back, or, just making an RPG user explode while he's in a tower and forcing the tower to collapse. Let me remind you, we are on the OG Xbox and PlayStation 2, ladies and gentlemen. The destructible environments on this level were unheard of at this time, and, now we have games like Battlefield and the upcoming game, The Finals, that take destruction just to new heights. The sound design for its time in Black was absolutely brilliant as well. Most of the gun sounds being lifted from like action movies like Die Hard and True Lies. Enemies also had all their own voice lines when attacking, so let's say if there was 3 enemies that are firing at you, one would have a low voice, one would have a medium voice, and another would have a high voice, making them distinct from each other. This also allows all weapons that are being fired in any particular scene to harmonize, creating an authentic sound for the game. Another feature that Black introduced was the heartbeat. So when you're reaching a low health in Black, the player's screen would fade in and out, and your heartbeat would be the dominating sound, and the rumble features inside the controller would also match the heartbeat that's on the screen, a feature that's still used today in modern FPS games. The game also introduced what I'm sure is kind of like our first look at mastery camos. If you completed the game on any difficulty above easy, you'd be granted silver weapons, which of course, gives you a nice silver look on the gun, and it would also give you infinite bullets, alongside unlocking a new weapon, the M16 with a grenade launcher attachment. And for the year 2005, this game had so much potential to carry on to be a great franchise, but things definitely took a different turn. From what we know, Criterion had plans for a sequel, but due to creative differences with Electronic Arts, the project was eventually scrapped, and most of the team at Criterion actually moved over to Codemasters, where they eventually developed a spiritual successor, and it was called Body Count. Came out in 2011. Remember it? Of course you don't. Body Count flopped hard, and with a saturated market at the time with games like Call of Duty, Halo, and Battlefield just in their prime and dominating the industry, it's really no wonder why Body Count didn't make the cut. There was unfortunately already so many games out at the time that were doing what Body Count was trying to do, but better, which was essentially kind of what Black was going for, but it just didn't hit as hard. The undertaking forced Codemasters to close one of their development studios, shrinking them down by a third of the size, plus it would have been hard just to go up against another game that essentially uses the same name, just with a more interesting, non-grounded plot in reality, backed by one of the largest companies in the world. Yes, Black is short for Black Ops, so technically there was a Black Ops game before the Black Ops game that we all know and love, that I have a feeling somebody maybe over at Treyarch or Activision played this game and was like, hey, I got a great idea for a game. But in all seriousness, the gameplay in Black was amazing, from shooting doors open with shotguns and just blowing stuff up to the realistic graphics for the time, and with all the innovating gameplay features that we still use today. It's kind of a shame that it didn't launch with a multiplayer, because I think then it would have at least had maybe a slight chance at running alongside it with the big boys in our multiplayer space. While some praised it for what it did at the time, others would go as far as to saying it was just an oversized tech demo. To an extent, I can kind of agree with this. The game does go above and beyond, trying to show you what the Xbox and PS2 was capable at that time, and I kind of think that was some of their focus. But I found the story to be very interesting, and honestly, I still enjoyed a playthrough here in 2003. The game still holds up surprisingly well to this day, but modern TVs do show the imperfections just a bit more than I remembered playing on a CRTV back in the day. But just keep in the back of your mind, you're playing a PS2 game, that easily looks like it could have belonged in the PS3 library of games. I do still think it's worth a playthrough, especially if you have Game Pass. I mean, that's where I seen it, and it inspired me, honestly, to make this video. This game is something I think deserves a bit more praise than it got, and it should get a better legacy. There was honestly once a time where I would stay up all night with one of my best friends who's unfortunately no longer with us. Rest in peace, Joe. I miss you, brother. And we would stay up all night trying to beat this game on its hardest difficulties and just trying to get all the objectives and the side objectives done so we get all the unlocks and seeing if we could find any secrets or anything, because we were just mind blown by this game at the time. And that was just it was a really great time in my past and something that I will honestly never forget. So there you go, guys. That is Black, a game that set some trends, broke some companies, and ultimately was kind of forgotten with time, but severely loved by few, such as myself. I want to say a huge big thank you to everybody who checked out the video, especially if you made it this far. You guys are amazing. I love you. Our time on this earth is honestly the most valuable thing that we have, and just constantly try to create the best memories with the people you love. Please drop me a like on this video if you guys enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if anybody is new, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later, everybody.
I don't want to rain on your fucking parade, but how the fuck are you planning to get by all those swinging dicks?
By asking politely, how the fuck do you think?